When you start giving kids access to social media, just ask, what do I want out of this? What do I want my kids to be able to do? What do I want them to learn? If it's to keep up with the Joneses, I don't think that's a good enough answer. So there has to be something more of a context of what's the outcome you're looking for.
You're listening to the smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This is our District Talk segment where we interview district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday shine online. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Hello, I'm Michael Portas, Superintendent of Schools for the Pontotoc Township School District. We're located in North Jersey. We're about 25 miles away from New York City. We serve around 2,100 students who are spread out among 5 schools.
Superintendent, it's so great to have you here. I'm so excited for you to share with us some of your successes, some of your advice, some of your tips for nationwide, our audience of district leaders, of principals, of parents, so they can really tackle some of these digital tools to keep their kids safe in the future, but also how do we harness them to help our students, our kids, everyone in our community launch into the future so that we're not sticking our head in the sand, but rather testing them in a safe way. So welcome to the episode. The first question I have for you, Superintendent, is what's your biggest accomplishment as a district over the past 1 to 4 years?
For me, and really for our district, it's that we survived the pandemic response and didn't just make it to the finish line and pass out at the end point. I feel like we actually became stronger as a consequence of the different crises that we faced. And we tried to approach each as an opportunity to be collaborative, to work together and provide direct answers to questions that were really challenging. It was pretty hard. Anybody who's been in North Jersey knows we're a confrontational people. We're comfortable with it. We tend to celebrate it. We definitely embraced that during portions of the response, but it was good for people to see that, we were going to absorb the hits and we were going to do so because it was in the best interest of supporting our kids and our community. And I feel like we've learned how to use certain tech tools better and really just work with our students, work with our staff members, and really find new ways to present education better to our kids in our community.
I like the way you describe Jersey. That's so great. It is a brand. It really is a brand on TV. It's phenomenal. It's exciting. So let's dive on into, and this is a question I ask every superintendent. What advice do you have for other school districts who might deal with social media issues that originate on a social media app, but then create a very real problem on campus?
I think the way to address problems is to start to work on addressing them before they even occur. And you do that really by establishing relationships and rapport. If the first time I reach out to a parent is to let them know, hey, your kid messed up royally on an app and it's now having material disruption in our schools. If the first time they ever hear my voice, see my face, I'm already behind on things. What we try to do, and it's a little easier in a smaller district because there's a greater level of accessibility, we have our administrators be visible and be proactive and really focus a lot on helping to make sure that we have a culture of civility where kids feel valued and families feel valued. And unfortunately, we know kids learn best by making mistakes. And social media has made it a lot easier to make mistakes on a very large scale. That gets very complicated and very messy. We're trying to do our part to be proactive, to create situations where kids don't feel like they have to resort to bad mouthing somebody or saying the worst thing in the world at 2 a.m. We'll reinforce it with messages. And at one of my board meetings, when things were going sideways a little while back, I pointed out to them a line from Arthur Miller: "It's easier to get back $1 million that was stolen from you than one word you let slip from your mouth." And I think that gets amplified on social media. You put it out there, and even if you try to bring it back, it doesn't always come back. We just try to make sure that kids feel supported, that they know that we're here with them, and that the families know the same way. Because, again, things are going to happen. And I guess it's good for job security, but we have to be able to be responsive and understanding. And sometimes we have to be very stern about it as well.
Excellent points. Kids learn the best while making mistakes. And I like how you said, let's start early beforehand. We like to call that the firefighter effect. Firefighters teach people how to avoid having a forest fire, but then there will still be a fire every once in a while. But how do we alert people early and often as to how to avoid that? So love that. And then that was a great quote. easier to get back $1 million that was stolen than to get back that one word that I paraphrased it, but love that. All right, let's move on to the positive side of social media. Can you provide some examples of how your students may have used their social media in a positive or productive way that may have benefited themselves or their community?
I think it's really important. It's one of the things I like about having checked out some of your other podcasts and just the general messaging is not to put the ostrich head in the sand, but to realize like this is something that has enormous power, and power can be used for good and for not so good. But let's focus on the good. And something that my high school principal did when he took over about 5 years ago is he wanted to harness Instagram, which is meeting kids where they are at the high school level. It seems like my experience is Facebook is really for the parents. Twitter kind of goes back and forth between the two. I know it's called X now, but Instagram was really good for the kids. And he had kids set up the Instagram page for the high school and run it and monitor it. And when I talk to other people about that, wait, you have 17-year-olds making decisions about your public facing platform? Yep, sure do. Because how are they going to learn how to make decisions unless we challenge them to do that? And now there's an enormous safety net that's for them. The analogy we like to give too is if you set a safety net up too high, if someone falls into it, it doesn't help because it hurts to get down from it. If you set it too low, it doesn't do anything. So you got to find that right spot for the safety net. So we do have the teacher working with them, the administration's involved as well. But the kids put out great content, and some of it's very funny, and it really has a lot of appeal to one another. And then our marketing classes also work on, we have digital signage throughout the school, as well as a marquee out front. They generate the content for that. Upperclassmen are largely responsible for that. And then the younger students work on a lot of the graphic design. And it's really good because they have to learn how to collaborate and they have to understand what you put out there. You got to make sure that an audience is going to understand it. And we also make it a point to respond positively to what we consider to be really good or positive social media posts. It's tough because I don't respond to anything online. I've been advised and I follow that the first time you respond to something on Facebook or Twitter is your biggest mistake. So I try to avoid that. But just hitting a simple like goes a long way.
Absolutely. That's great. I love how you're having students run the social media. It's really great. And they've been running the newspaper at schools and colleges for hundreds of years, it seems like. So why wouldn't we give them that safety net and do a brand document around a school's social media? So great work. Excellent example. So the next question I have for you, what suggestions do you have for parents to encourage their kids to use tech in a positive way, both in the classroom and at home?
I think it comes back to modeling. And we know that parents are kids first, and I would argue most important teachers. And I say this as somebody who has 3 boys of my own. They're older now, but my wife and I were very aware of how we conducted ourselves was how the kids were going to take in the world and think, oh, this is how I do things. So if you're at the dinner table and you're disengaged and you're checking out the notification you just got, what's the implicit message there? That this thing is more important than the company I'm keeping right now. And so I think that's really important to just help kids see like there are boundaries. Like the cell phone's a wonderful thing. It's an incredibly powerful device, but human interaction is really important. But then I think also for them to understand that what they put out on social media, though the kids might not necessarily be following them, they'll find out. Like if you put out a post about Dr. Portas is a jerk, I can't believe he made this terrible decision. If you're putting that out there, your kid's going to be thinking, wow, our superintendent's a clown. And they're also going to think like that social media is a really good platform for expressing negativity. And so I think that's really important. And a really sound piece of advice I received a few years back, somebody recommended that I always ask the question, what do I want out of this for any decision in life? And I think when you start giving kids access to social media, just ask, what do I want out of this? What do I want my kids to be able to do? What do I want them to learn? If it's to keep up with the Joneses, I don't think that's a good enough answer. So there has to be something more of a context of what's the outcome you're looking for. And then I think to just set boundaries too. I used to make sure that all my kids, my wife and I all charged up our phones in a central location in the house that wasn't in anybody's bedroom. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, when I had to keep my phone nearby because I'd get woken up at night, I get woken up in the morning, I broke the rule, and I actually let my kids break the rule too. They were all in their teens and 20s at that point, but not great modeling, I guess. I'm outing myself. But nevertheless, I think to just show like that there have to be limits, and for parents to understand too, look, your kids are they're gonna make mistakes. So start to plan ahead for how are you going to respond. Chances are you're paying for the device, you're paying for the Wi-Fi, You're not intruding, you're not overstepping, you're not invading their privacy. You're there to support them and teach them and help them develop what I'd like to think is a social media presence and a digital platform that'll help them get a job or get into college, as opposed to the opposite, which we hear the horror stories about that, unfortunately, all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your tips, especially about how to model the best practices. So, the next question I'd like for us to explore is, what are your suggestions for other districts to increase parent engagement in their community? And kind of a follow up question is, if you found any, are there any specific channels or events or types of events that get the biggest turnout in your community that you'd like to inspire others with?
Turnout's a tough one. And it's funny going through some of the other podcasts, people talk about parent universities. And I love parent universities, but it's tough sometimes to play to an empty auditorium. We'll record them and we'll put them up on our YouTube page, but I'm not sure how much traction that's actually getting. And that's something that I feel like we need to address. A funny note, I'm going to be in a dunk tank in about 6 hours as part of the National Night Out, which speaks to the coercive techniques of our local police department. We'll get a better turnout for that than we will, unfortunately, for a parent university on social media, because it's not. I don't know. The topic's not interesting enough. Maybe it's not engaging enough, even though you and I certainly would think it is. But I think for us, we've tried to reinforce the messaging through social media, through our newsletters. I started doing podcasts last year, and just being visible with things. I like to remind my administrators that if you're visible, people are more likely to trust you. Visibility, to me, it's critical. And then we also do partner quite a bit with law enforcement. We've had the county prosecutor come in to speak to our students in middle school about social media, as well as avoiding bias incidents. Because unfortunately, we have had to have interventions for that. 'Cause kids post stuff, and unfortunately, when you're 12 years old, you don't have that understanding and awareness of consequences. And so we need to make sure that we educate them on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what are your thoughts around some districts that are going cell phone free in the classrooms to lower distractions and improve learning and student development?
I think it's genius. I'm actually about halfway through the anxious generation. And it's interesting how much that really delves into the addictive tendencies of cell phones. And I actually lost an argument 2 years ago with my middle school principal and his assistant principal. And it was an argument in the intellectual sense, and I lost in the win and loss sense. And I wanted us to allow kids to use their cell phones in the classroom so that we could model for them effective ways to use phones. Because I've found I've been at workshops and people are disengaged because they're checking out their fantasy football scores, or it's all stuff that if you really think about it, it's mindless and it can wait, like stay in the moment. And I felt what better place to model that than in a classroom. And they made some really good points about how it's not the place for it, because if you check out a kid's phone, and I've had this experience, my boys will show me a video, maybe it's a 30-second clip of something that happened in a Patriots game, and they're getting 4 or 5 notifications during that clip. They're swiping up to get them out of the way. Our kids, they need to be free of that. They need to be free of those distractions. And something I hadn't thought of either is there's that fear of missing messages or other communication from their parents as well. And that's something that I'm sure it's well intending, but you shouldn't be reaching out to your kid during the school day. Let them focus on school during the school day. If there's an emergency, obviously call the front office for that. We've had a few battles too of elementary school parents who want their kids to have smartwatches because they want to be able to track them. No, because that smartwatch goes off. It's not only distracting the 8-year-old who's wearing it.
Yeah.
Every other 8-year-old in the classroom is going to be distracted by the bright, shiny objects. In my big esoteric sense of the world, I would love it if we could model effective cell phone use in schools, but it's just not what's the reality. The reality is you're better off telling the kids, put it away. We know they have them. We're not going to pretend they don't, but we don't want you using them.
I think the world is slowly taking a turn towards what you said. You said, I think it's genius. And 5 years ago, it would have been a different discovery, different just dialogue, if you will, because there weren't all these notifications. Now there are. It's just compounding with every kid getting the buzzing. We all know if you turn your phone off, I now turn the Wi-Fi off, the phone off. I put it in airplane mode at night, put it further away from my bed than I used to, because of all this stuff we're learning about signals. Who knows if it makes a difference, but it's not a bad decision to make at night, right? Yeah. At all in the long run. But also I do agree, we can't focus in the classroom as easily or anytime during the day. Let's dive on into the second to last question. And this is an interesting one. Superintendent, I want you to think of when you were young and you went into a counselor and said, what should I do for my career someday? Whether it was in junior high, middle school, high school, wherever it was, they then analyze you and they say, another superintendent said, I should either drive a dump truck or I should build foundations and dig ditches. That's literally what the counselor said. That's what the computer popped out. And he said, this is terrible. What a bad advice. So I want to dive in with that in mind. I want to dive into the next question and get your insight and advice for other districts. Are there any personality tests, maybe like a Myers-Briggs or a path or a tool that your school districts are using in middle school, junior high, high school with the students to help them find their why, their strengths, their purpose, to help them navigate their future?
And this is a great question in that I don't have a good answer to it, which I quite like because as an intellectual exercise, it forces me to think, wait, what are we doing with this at the middle school? And I don't think we're doing quite enough to help kids understand that, hey, there are these multiple pathways that you can consider. Like we do talk to them about career education and try to get them to understand that given your skill set and your interests, these are different things you can pursue. But at the high school level, we use the Naviance technology to help steer kids towards universities and colleges that might be of interest or other opportunities that they could pursue with interest in majors and whatnot. But I don't know that we've necessarily actively done a personality test. And of course, there are certain pratfalls we got to make sure that we don't fall into in terms of surveying. There's policy that governs that, but it's easy enough. You let people know this is what we're going to be asking. This is where it's going to go. This is where it's going to be housed. But when I was first reviewing some of the material, I realized I don't know if I'm doing so great on this one. So I think that's one that we could definitely dig into.
Let's double click. I'm going to be vulnerable and share with you one of my missions when I left Disney Studios brand marketing. I started going on stages to 29 states. We really started implementing the Myers-Briggs. It's been around 100 years or something. It's standardized. No parent's going to be like, oh, that was bad for my kid and it was good for another. No, it's pretty standardized. And what's really neat is we are now in a world, and I don't want to give away too much of what the amazing Smart Social team's doing. We'll get into that in a sec, but where every kid's taking a Myers-Briggs and then we're using AI to really refine their strengths and create a why inside of some prompting, which is kind of neat. And that's kind of available to everybody if you spend hours doing it. But it's a 15-minute test for anybody watching it, Myers-Briggs. And then you take that, the 4 letters, I prefer, there's a word, a name behind it. It'll grant you a name, put you into a bucket. Oh no, that's bad. It's actually really refreshing. You might not be this perfect person, but here's Josh's strengths. I come out as the entrepreneur, they call it. Here's Josh's strengths. Whoa, those are the Ferrari strengths. And here's his weaknesses. Like the Ferrari goes really fast straight, but it can't turn very quickly. It's not good at cornering. Okay, that's me. It's really accurate. So we're taking that now, putting it into AI, and it's coming up with a one-liner. Like here's your 3 words. Here's your one line that you stand for. Kids are now, students are putting it on their mirror in the bathroom. This is because it's tough right now, superintendent, with all the data showing how much suicide, anxiety, depression, fear of missing out. Oh no, what if I missed something? What if we had a kid, North Star, this is what I'm really good at. And if somebody makes fun of me, I will go back to this. It'll reduce bullying. And this is what we're finding. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. And it's funny because as you were talking, you definitely got the wheels turning up here. And something that I used a lot over the course of the pandemic was a journal prompt I used to give my students when I was teaching English. And it's that the Chinese character for crisis is the same as their character for opportunity, which is actually true.
Wow.
Yeah. And so if you look at what your assessed weaknesses are, okay, that's what they are right now. But now that's an opportunity because now I'm aware of what I need to address. And now I can work on those and try to turn those into a strength. And even if I don't necessarily achieve strength level with them, that work I'm putting in is going to have meaning. And you hit the nail on the head about the self-esteem side of things and just that feeling of value and worth. What are we all looking for? Everybody wants to feel valued. And I've brought this up a lot at our board meetings as well. And I was watching a documentary a few years back, and the lead singer of Rush, Geddy Lee, was talking about what music meant to him as a teenager. And he said, I'm good at that. And that makes me feel pretty good about myself. And I love that line. It's not just because I love their music, but like, how many of our kids need to be able to point to something and say, I can do that really well. And so to your point, to identify like, hey, you're good at this. And so whether it's creating digital content, whether it's playing the tuba, whether it's being able to make 12 consecutive free throws. I don't care what it is. If you're good at something and you know it, that's going to build you up in such a way that as life looks to chip away at you, because there's a natural attrition in all of our experiences, you've got that strength and you can fall back on that. And again, it can build you up. So I'm actually getting fired up. I feel like a motivational speaker all of a sudden right now about the
It's
Myers-Briggs.
kind of fun. I mean, we can all go back to when we were 10 to 14 years old or older. And if you don't know your style, and that's really what Myers-Briggs, and I don't get paid by Myers-Briggs. In fact, we have a free one that and any of the other district leaders, if you want to beta this in your school district and try this out, every kid takes the 10-minute test. It's free. Every parent goes, I love this. And in fact, superintendent, I thought in the beginning when we started implementing this, and this isn't an advertisement for anyone, you can go, there's tons of free ones out there. I thought in the beginning parents are going to get pushback. I thought they're going to be like, hold on, you can't do a personality test on my kid. Guess what? Overwhelmingly, they constantly go, I wish someone did this with me when I was my child's age. Here's how we describe it. You've helped my child understand their strengths and their weaknesses. And we tell every kid, I didn't mean to go into this much on this episode, but it's too important. I have this theory, and anyone can steal this who's watching this today. A weakness might not turn into your strength, but it will turn into an asset. And let me give you a personal vulnerability example. When I was really young, when I left Disney and started helping people with stuff, I'm a little dyslexic. I'll say things backwards a lot or stuff. And I had to develop a procedure to do X, Y, and Z to write out posts on social media. As I was building this for school districts, we built out, here's how you build your social media planning. And I remember because I'm dyslexic, I had to build it in a Google spreadsheet that was shareable, and every single word, it would count the characters and do all this stuff to overcome a little bit of dyslexia. I built something that big brands and school districts were going, hey, can I get a copy of that? That is phenomenal. My legal department loves it. So my weakness became an asset to so many big brands. They flew me around the country. They're like, hey, can you fly and teach AT&T business this stuff? Or with this, I'm okay. And so that is powerful. I may never be the world's best at overcoming that, but I built something that everybody's using. And imagine a kid doing that. I can't read well because of this. Speechify was created. It's a great little app. They don't sponsor us, but somebody with dyslexia created that so it could read to them. Okay. I love this rabbit hole we're going down. If any of you superintendents listening to this right now want to try this in your community, a little shameless plug, we'd love to implement some Myers-Briggs plus AI into what's their 3 words. This is what we're finding. And again, not perfectly figured out. Kids love 3 words on the mirror, and kids love their why. What am I freakishly good in 1 sentence? That's what us humans seem to like. All right, real quick. This is a shameless thank you to my incredible team. Before we get into the last question, Superintendent, we're going to talk about AI in just a sec. Before we get into that, just a thank you to the incredible army of parents doing our research at smartsocial.com. You are creating 54 plus live events. We've got one of them tonight. This episode will come out after it's done. But tonight is all about AI, the future of AI, how to use it to keep your kids safe, but also how to nurture your kids with it, the 3 types of AI you need to know about, and then the 5 or 6 tutoring sub apps that you need to know about so that anytime parents are at home, they can become the teacher using this special tool. And then when kids are back in class, the kids are ahead of the game and doing great work. So thank you so much to the amazing team. You're doing 54 plus live events. They're putting up with me as I ask them to create 100 plus reels that we license to schools to share these valuable 1-minute techniques with everybody in the community. And we have the best newsletter team. I'm rooting for you. I'm grateful for you at smartsocial.com. You're helping with our whole mission. Okay, we are back now with the episode. Superintendent, let's talk about the most important topic that everybody's raving about. It'll probably be the most important topic for the next couple of years because people at first were afraid it's going to help us cheat. Now they're like, wow, it's pretty amazing as long as it doesn't give you the answer. So I want to dive into this. How is your school district approaching AI tools like ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, and Claude?
Yeah, I'd say we're progressing very slowly. I've spoken publicly about it at our board meetings, especially from policy perspective, and been open that as we generate policy, and right now we only have it embedded in our plagiarism policy, which I think is misplaced at this point. It was probably well placed about 1.5 years ago. But we definitely want to make more inroads there, and our chief technology officer is going to help guide the way. But I've referred to myself in our process as being the vegetarian butcher, because I feel like I have a lot of knowledge about the product, but I don't really know how to use it, particularly not that well. So I definitely want to be involved in this process as a learner as well. So we're launching an AI team this year, and we want to make sure we get students involved because they probably have a lot of them probably already have a sense of how to harness it, but also our staff. And I think in an era of staff shortages, and we're facing a lot of challenges with staff retention and recruitment, we can make their job a little bit easier. We're going to make their job better, and we're going to make this a more attractive place for them to work and get parents involved so parents understand how they can harness the power. Certainly, our administrators who are constantly generating content to share out, and really the greater communities. So at this point, I feel like we're still behind, and we definitely want to make strides to catch up. And in the end, it's ultimately going to benefit our most important stakeholders, which is our students. And in so doing, it's going to benefit our staff as well.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a phrase that's going to sound a little harsh to everybody, but we'll do it tongue in cheek. I tell my team, I bought the pro version of ChatGPT, and I think I have another one or two or something like that. And I told them, and this is a big joke, but there's a little bit of truth to every joke. I go, look, I'm buying you these tools. I want you to use them at least 5 minutes a day. Otherwise, in 6 months, you might not be here. You might not be working at Smart Social. I'm buying the tools so that you can try it and then teach us. Let's innovate. 5 minutes a day, or there's a big you're fired at the end. And it's a joke, but it's also very true because we have to keep moving. Remember when we were kids, superintendent, and they said, we do need to learn math. We do need to learn how to sketch things out and really think up here and gut check things.
Yep.
But also they said, you'll never have a calculator. So you better learn this. We do have a supercomputer that could land on the moon pretty much. And it's going to have AI in it in a year. It's going to have the craziest stuff. But at the same time, we can't hide from those calculators of the future. I would argue we need to embrace them. And then also you will get ahead as a leader if you can do back of the napkin thoughts up here, gut check, and use the tools to get ahead. I mean, really is this healthy balance? Superintendent, one final question. What is that healthy balance for other schools, knowing that you're the vegetarian butcher, or you haven't tried this stuff as much, but you can certainly speak about it from a safety aspect? What is your healthy balance that you would recommend?
You use the term gut check, and I think a lot of that holds true. Like if your gut's telling you that something's not right, you got to believe in it and that something's not right. We have to let down our guard a little bit and be aware this is something that is going to help to prepare our kids. And what is our mission as a school district, if not to prepare kids for that uncertain future that's in the vast unlit unknown? I don't know if there's a really good answer to the balance. It's going to sound like Potter Stewart saying, I know it when I see it. But I think what it comes down to is making sure that you're helping kids and protecting kids. And I will say that we've had some hesitation with AI implementation. And this has come from me not knowing, well, where's our information going? Where's it being stored? Is this FERPA compliant? Was it COPA compliant as well? So just to make sure that if I do encourage my child study team to generate IEPs using AI, where's that information going? Because it's going to have a lot of personal identifiers in it. And how am I sure that's going to be stored confidentially? I know those answers many of them are already here. I guess it's going to take me a while to process them and then trust that my chief technology officer, my administrators, teachers, and kids too have a good idea of what's best. So balance comes from the gut, I suppose.
And I'm going to give you a homework assignment, Superintendent. I want you to use it 5 minutes a day. You're going to start at openai.com, go to ChatGPT 5 minutes a day. I'm going to check in with you in a week.
I wrote it
5
down.
minutes a day. We got to practice that muscle, right? Practice it just a little bit. It turns into a skill. And I love that. Hey, Superintendent, thank you so much for joining us here today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me as well, and keep doing the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much. For the rest of you, it's so great to have you watch the episodes and contribute to our 54 plus live events a year. Our incredible team creating, I'm going to tell you right now, it is the best newsletter in the business going out to parents, district leaders, principals, and everybody in between. If you're a parent, guardian, you want to learn how to keep your kids safe on social media so they can someday shine online, we'd love to have you here at smartsocial.com, where we've been doing this for 11 years. In internet years, that's like 1,000 years. It's incredible. The best team in the business. We're so grateful to reach millions of people a year for that cause. For the rest of you, as the title of my book says, remember when you're online to keep it light, bright, and polite. because your kids are watching. We'll see all of you on the next episode. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks for listening to our smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This was our District Talk segment where we interview school district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday launch into their future by shining online. This episode was brought to you by our smartsocial.com VIP program. It's called the Very Informed Parent Program, which helps you engage your students with teen-led video lessons. Stay one step ahead with our premium parent newsletter and discover hidden features on trending apps on teens' phones and our 54 plus live parent and student-friendly events every single year. You can click on the link below to chat with one of our team members if you want a free pass to our VIP program to support your community with our smartsocial.com resources. And if you're a district leader who has a success story, we would love to feature you on a future episode. You can click the links below to reach out. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a great day.